Thank you all so much for joining me for Tao of the Day. This is Martin John, and I am here to take your numbers between 1 and 81, and we will read from the Tao Te Ching. What is the Tao Te Ching? The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE, and it consists of writings that are all based on us trying to live a more reasonable life. What does it mean to live a reasonable life? And I say this every day. It means to live a life in which I am not requiring you or someone else or something else to be anything other than it is. I am more important. It is more important to me that everybody has the freedom I have and that I understand what my freedoms are. And so when I get into reading the Tao, I always find that there's always little ways that we can just be a little bit more reasonable. And if you have a number between 1 and 81 you want to select, I would love to read the Tao with you. The Tao Te Ching consists of short texts. I'm actually looking at number 18 right now, and it states, when Tao is lost, etiquette is observed. When etiquette cannot be abided, we find excuses to make it proper. When excuses gut the family, chaos favors the hierarchy. When all the neighbors are in chaos, blind loyalty is demanded. So this is a short verse, and I don't know why I read it, but I read number 18. And so if you were to pick a number, we'd read that verse of the Tao. And I'm going to go through this verse. We're going to go through 18, and we're going to look at it. When Tao is lost, etiquette is observed. And it's interesting, when I look at Tao, Tao helps us live kind of with an empty mind. Tao helps us be here present in this moment. And when I can when it is expressed that I should be nice, I need to do what people say is etiquette of etiquette, right? Like, well, you stand up when a woman walks in the room, or you take your head off on the elevator, or you do certain things that prove etiquette. Now, we created etiquette because Tao was lost. If I trust that you are always treating people with respect and with love, and if you step up to the plate every day and you do that, well, then all of your actions are should be considered within etiquette. But every culture sees things a little differently. And it's interesting when you go overseas or when you go to another country and you say, oh yeah, usually I do this, but I was actually drawn to do something else for some reason. Like I was inspired to say something other than I normally would, or I was to do something or to eat something that I normally wouldn't do. And it just called me. I didn't think about it at all. I didn't plan it that way. I just did it differently. And then you find out down the line that, oh, well, this place where you were, well, that was what is considered good. And when we can trust our gut, when we can trust our heart and move forward with that trust in hand, then we will just be guided to do the right thing all the time rather than having to uh you know it's funny when I think about going to other cities or other countries or something, and it's like possible that etiquette here in the United States might be very different from etiquette in Dubai. And so when you go there, certain things might get you put in prison, right? But is is it in your heart to act that way in that moment, or are you feeling oppressed because you can't be who you are? If it's like, I'm an American and I have this identity and I'm going to go over there and I'm going to have alcohol. Well, it's a dry country, I believe. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I think it is. When that happens, you you want to buck the system. You want to be something else. And it's like, well, is that because that's what you learned, or is that because you're trying to hold on to something, right? So when Tao is lost, etiquette is observed. There's an etiquette, and you might learn about an etiquette that you want to fight against. Well, but we're observing etiquette. Why are we observing etiquette? Because we lost Tao. Why did we lose Tao? Because if we had Tao, you wouldn't have an identity that you need to hold on to. But because you have an identity, we need etiquette. Because you have an identity of what you are, we need to tell people you have to dress up to go to the opera, and we have to do these things because this is the etiquette that we've created. Now, is it true that if you held Tao, you'd have to dress up to go to the opera? Probably not, because it's not necessary. But what I'm saying here is, like, when you lose faith with yourself and when you embrace an identity, and that's when Tao is lost. Tao is lost when you embrace an identity. Then etiquette is observed. Why is etiquette observed? Because we need people to put their identities down. And we need people to, like, we need your identity to go away, because your identity isn't what this place calls for, isn't what this, dinner calls for, isn't what this country calls for. And if you were connected with Tao, you'd be able to walk into any country and naturally be guided into loving everybody, because that's the natural state. But when you lose the natural state and you hold on to your identity, into who you are as a human being, well, and you have a right to be here, and you have all of these things, and you should be able to do what you want because of your identity. Well, that's why we observe etiquette. We observe etiquette so that everybody's not just running around being like, I'm me. And so when Tao is lost, etiquette is observed. And that's a good second. It's a good, like, it's best to just love people. But if we need to revert to etiquette because we've lost Tao, we do. We revert to etiquette, and etiquette tells us, yes, okay, well, in order for me to show you love, I have to do it this way, right? There's etiquette at a wedding. There's etiquette at, at a fancy dinner place. There's etiquette all over the place. And when you can observe etiquette, well, then you're doing the next best thing to Tao. Tao is just you loving people. Observing etiquette is you at least respecting people. When etiquette cannot be abided, we find excuses to make it proper. That's an interesting line. When etiquette cannot be abided, meaning you cannot observe etiquette, we find excuses to make it proper. I wish I took a note on this before. When etiquette cannot be abided, we find excuses to make it proper. When etiquette cannot be abided, we find excuses to make it proper. So I think this has to do with, let's say you cannot abide, if you cannot abide etiquette, like if you cannot abide not drinking in Dubai, if Dubai is dry, then you say, well, I'm doing this because, right? Because I have, like I have to be able to do this, right? Like, we find excuses to make it proper in our own mind. We find excuses to make it proper for ourselves because we can't abide it. No, we can't abide it, so we have excuses. Like, this is why. We come up with excuses as to why. So etiquette is observed, and when we can't abide etiquette, we can be like, well, we don't have to anyway. And that is a further dissolution from Tao. So Tao is lost, then we observe etiquette. When we can't abide etiquette, we come up with excuses. Right? We come up with excuses why it's okay. When excuses gut the family, when excuses gut the group that is within you, right? Within your group. And just like, I mean, if I were to look at this from the Alcoholics Anonymous kind of standpoint, if I was to look at this, because I'm in recovery, as most of you know, Um, and I'm not an AA follower, so if you are looking for me to speak well of AA, that might not happen here. When Tao is lost, then etiquette is observed. Etiquette of how one can recover from alcohol. When etiquette can't be abided, we find excuses to make it proper, right? And I think that falls into place. When excuses gut the family, when everybody's excuses start to just get into everybody else's way, it's like, well, I can't be nice to you because of one thing or another, or I can't, like, I'm me and I have this identity that I'm holding on to. And when everybody has their identity, everybody has their own identity, chaos favors the hierarchy. So when everybody is in chaos, then the person who pulls the purse strings, or the person who is at the top of the hierarchical structure, that chaos favors them, right? So if this happens in cities and countries, when chaos happens in the country because everybody is making excuses because they can't abide etiquette, because they don't trust themselves, so they have to abide etiquette. When they can't do that, they come up with excuses, and when their excuses are so much that it guts the family, it guts the group, it guts everything, chaos favors the hierarchy. When all the neighbors are in chaos, blind loyalty is demanded. And this is when all the neighbors, when everybody, and the and so, like, when one country falls into chaos and it favors a hierarchy, and then another country falls into chaos and they favor the hierarchy, the two hierarchical um, groups are going to demand of everybody blind loyalty, because they're just good. That's what happened with COVID. I would think when Tao is lost, so we don't have any guidance, right? Any internal guidance. Etiquette is observed, so we have an etiquette of how to deal with, a pandemic or whatever. When etiquette cannot be abided, we find excuses to make it proper. It's okay, and then we start cutting away everything. When excuses gut the family, and how many families have been gutted by the excuses of people not following mandates and other things like that. Chaos favors the hierarchy. So the hierarchy gets to dictate what happens, whether it's to have mandates or to not have mandates, as to being like quarantined or not quarantined. When all the neighbors are in chaos, that means your neighbors, like everybody, our neighbors, the neighbors of our country, all of it. When that is all in chaos, then blind loyalty is demanded, and that blind loyalty will, and that's demanded by people, however that looks. I do have somebody in the queue. Allison, thank you so much for joining me. So yeah, so the losing of Tao. How's it going, Allison?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well.
Good.
Talking a little bit about the Tao, as I want to.
This is the dove of the day.
Yes, it is.
So I got to pick a number, huh?
Well, you can. How's things going as we're moving into the fall?
It is good. I'm a little sleepy because, as you know, my husband ran the Chicago Marathon yesterday, and
Yeah,
we were
congratulations to him.
yeah up and out by 6. So, and then it was a long
Yeah,
day, so a little
yeah,
sleepy.
yeah. Andy was a little sad as to not be able to run it this year. But
Mm,
but uh, but yeah, she's looking at getting in the lottery for next year.
mm. There are two guys that have run all 44 marathons
Really?
consecutively. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, good for them.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, let's.
I mean, I'm I've never run a marathon, so but I've been alive for all of them, so
That counts.
that's something, I guess.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna pick a number. I'm just gonna look at the numbers on my calendar in front of me and pick 29.
29. Huh. So this one is entitled make the world a better you. So that's interesting.
Hmm.
Do you want to make the world a better place? How arrogant you must be. The world, like you, is sacred and cannot be improved. A force of will would ruin it. If you had a guide, if it had a guide, it would be misled. There are times for all things, even this, whatever it happens to be. The master allows all things to be as they are. She doesn't want to control them. She simply lets them do what they do. She also does what she does, staying connected to Tao.
It's a good one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's my translation. I'm going to take some credit.
That was your translation?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It sounds very more up to speed with current terminology.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I think, I'm patting myself on the back a little bit. I think I did a good job.
Well, yeah, make the world a better you. I mean, there is no other world. Come on, guys. It's within your consciousness. So,
Right. Like you're experiencing this. Like like you're upset that someone did something. Like that's your experience of it. Like you're upset
hmm.
about that, like, and I love, like, so as we kind of go through this, do you want to make the world a better place? How arrogant you must be. Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the assumption. Okay, so that's the assumption that it's a human judgment that something has gone wrong and I'm here to fix it. And I can't tell you how many times I'm sort of so sick of it, frankly, that, I'm here to change the world. No, really? How the fuck are you going to do that?
yeah.
You just
And
do you and
yeah,
your world changes because there's billions of different worlds.
that's right. And like, as this goes into the next line, the world, like you, is sacred. It cannot be improved. Like in this moment, you are perfect. Like I always say, like, don't let your definition of perfection rob you of yours. Right?
Hmm.
Like even though tomorrow you are going to have learned more, you are still right now perfect.
Yeah, it takes me to the thought of like consciousness as projecting itself because everything is happening right now and it's all laid out and it's all infinite and it's all changing. And what creates the concept of experience is where consciousness focuses itself. So, this concept of I have to change this thing that I do not like, or I'm going to change the world. We're on the precipice in the next 50 years of understanding that the world that we perceive actually exists within us. And so if we just shift our consciousness, we literally shift to a different world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where like, and what we're coming out of is this idea that we can impose our will upon things.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, that's huge. That's huge in personal development where people are kind of beginning to wake up and they're like, wait a second. So, this person I've been coveting because I think they have the way doesn't really have the way because there's infinite ways and I get to choose?
Right.
Yeah, you get to
And that's where
choose.
we move on. A force of will would ruin it, would ruin the world, right? If it had a
Mhm,
guide, it would be misled. Like imagine if we were trying to like guide the world to a place and we would just be taking it where we wanted it to go.
mhm. Well, I mean, mechanistically, that's not even possible because you're not
Right.
taking the world. You're taking your own perception of what you think the world is everywhere you go because it's your perception,
Right.
right? Like, there are people that think the world isn't broken. There are people that think the world is broken. There are people that think it's mildly broken. It's like there's infinite variety of ways to perceive what's actually happening because it's all coming from within you. It's like it's
Hmm.
your perception.
I talk to people sometimes about, like this concept and they're always like, "Yeah, but we want to keep the species." And I'm like, "Well, why?"
Well, yeah, I mean
like do
but
we does the future really need humans? Like it's okay if we don't. If it's okay if we die off, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think that comes from this concept of, my own importance and
Yeah,
the fact that they don't understand that your consciousness, who you know yourself to be on a fundamental level, is you can't ever extinguish it. It's not
right.
possible. It's just you will continue to express yourself in different forms. And so if it's not human, it'll be something else. You don't fundamentally die. So it's like, and the earth will live on. The earth doesn't need us.
That's
The earth
right, right.
itself
It
will
doesn't.
live
It
on.
definitely doesn't need.
Yeah, so we extinguish ourselves and a couple of species, and then what? Everything regenerates because change is infinite. It's just
Yeah,
gonna go on.
yeah. You know, whatever, like whatever is going to happen, like that, like there's so much of it, like, and that's why it says, do you think you can make the world a better place? How arrogant you must be. Like, we have this idea of what a perfect world is, but the world doesn't necessarily think, won't necessarily have the same thoughts as you know?
No, every consciousness is independent in perceiving itself to be what it is, and
Right.
it's all independent. Like that's like the big smack on the cheek is like, wake up. It's your perception. My kids have three different moms, right?
Yeah,
Because they have three
absolutely.
different perceptions of me in every single moment. Like I'm one person. So that's the easiest way to understand perception is like, whether you're a child viewing a parent or a parent viewing a child or a person viewing a spouse or friend or a loved one, like there's infinite different variations of that person. It depends on
Hmm.
your perspective and you're eliciting from them the version that you get. It's
That's right.
you.
Yeah. And can you approach your spouse, children, friends, self, even, from openness to receive what they are right now?
I'll tell you it's when this concept lands for a person. When it landed for me in a big way, because I just had a really dramatic situation. You would call it dramatic, you would call it painful, you would call it, why did this happen to me? It's one of those
Mm.
things. And then when you shift from why did this happen to me to I created this to know myself on a new level,
Go on.
like you're like, oh, wait a second. I created this
Mhm.
situation with this person, the perception I have of them, the perception I had of everything based on my own beliefs to know myself better. And I let go of, I don't know fully, we'll find out fully when it happens again, right? We'll only know truly if I fully let it go and I can perceive a similar situation in a different way. But it was like, oh, okay, I get it. I get why I needed to have this perception in this way.
Right.
And there's no, you did this to me. There's none of that. There's no pointing
Yeah.
fingers. There's no hatred. There's no, you know, resentment and a need to get back at that person. It's just like, oh, we had an experience and I chose to have it. And she didn't have it the same way at all. I'm sure it was
Right.
100% different.
Right. Right. I mean, I tell, like, my recover yourself stuff is all about that. It's about, like, you and another person are not having the same experience. You're
Mm,
having yours for a very unique reason. And if you can leave that experience and be still with yourself, no matter what the experience is, and understand that this is yours. Now, why is it yours? Like, and this goes back to my being stung by the scorpion. We had different experiences. Like, it wasn't about like the scorpion stinging me. It was about me having the experience of being stung.
mm-hmm.
And it had nothing to
Yes.
do with the scorpion. The scorpion was just, and the scorpion needed the experience of feeling threatened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those are the things that we have. And we're all having these experiences for ourselves. And when we can recognize that, like, we are here to recover ourselves as a whole, meaning the whole universe, the whole of experience, the whole of all things, and that we are, lack of a better word, God or Tao or Brahman or whatever, like we are that.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It's easy for people to go into when as they're processing too. because I've had this experience and I've heard people reflect this, is I'm a bad person. It's bad karma. It's bad luck. It's like there's some version of me that's quote unquote bad, therefore I deserve this martyrdom kind of, which isn't true, but
Well,
it's
that's
sort of
not necessarily. Well, I would also say that that experience is one to be further looked at as well. I'm having this experience of thinking I'm bad. Where is it? Like
mhm,
why is this? This is a lesson as well. It's not just the experience you have with someone else, but what that leads into is also an experience.
mhm,
And then that leads into another experience. And as you continue having these experiences, the same work applies, which
yeah.
is, why is this mine?
Well, and it's all based on belief systems because they
Right.
create the structure of your reality. So if you believe
Right.
yourself to be unlovable, if you believe yourself to be not worthy, if you like whatever the belief is,
That's
like
right.
it
And that's
expresses
how it's
itself.
going to express itself. It's
Mhm.
going to express, because you're asking the question, why is nobody trustworthy? Well, the world is going to show you why nobody is trustworthy by making sure you know what that looks like. Well, when
Mhm.
you ask, well, how can I trust people more? Like that changes the answer.
But that's right, exactly. And that it is good to know that that's just a version because it isn't that person isn't trustworthy. They're not trustworthy in your experience because that's what you
Yeah.
elicited from them.
Right. Right. Yeah. It has nothing to do with them at all.
No, nada. Which
Nothing.
is like,
Right.
well, and then it's interesting because you get to look at the theme. Where is that theme carried itself over? Because usually when you don't recognize it, because we have them as active beliefs, they replay themselves with different players, with different theme,
Right.
with different
Yeah.
context, but it's the same general theme.
Yeah, and that's and like we look at, in the recover yourself work, we look at that theme by trying to find our pacifiers, trying to find the things that we use to avoid and the things that trigger us, right? So
Mhm.
when we look at those, we find our theme, and then we can identify that in a much clearer way because they show up everywhere.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
And it's the
different
same
flavor.
thing. I always say it's like a tree. The trunk is your theme, but all the branches are the triggers. All the leaves are the trigger, and the branches are the story, and then the theme is the trunk. And so
Mhm.
your leaves are going to get, like, any little thing can get you triggered, and that'll get you telling a story that'll be related to your theme.
Yeah, it's so powerful to sort of be your own investigative reporter and sort of lay your experiences as you perceive them out and be like, where's the theme? Where is the theme that I'm exploring to know myself on any level?
Yeah. And this wraps up with, the master allows all things to be as they are. She doesn't want to control them. She simply lets them do what they do. And she also does what she does, staying connected to Tao, staying connected to this ability to be aware.
Mic drop.
Thank you so much, Allison. I appreciate you coming up, and it's always such a pleasure to chat with you. Especially on such a, like, I'm really glad to have people that understand this work, because it is work, and it is, like, in not being a victim, right? In not being controlled by that which is happening around you, and recognize that that is what's going on within you. And it's been going on within you probably a lot longer than you recognize, even if it's something traumatic, even if it's something horrible. That is something that, even if it's something deplorable, like, we are capable of the most beautiful and horrendous things, that we can think of. So, but when we can make the world a better you, right? I'm going to read through this again because it is such a good one. Do you want to make the world a better place? How arrogant you must be to think that, right? How arrogant you must be to think that you can make the world a better place. The world, like you, is sacred and cannot be improved. I mean, if you think about, like, if someone came up to you and said, I can make you a better person. I can make you a better person. Like, who are you? Who are you to tell me that? Who are you to tell, like, I'm great as I am, you know? You cannot be improved upon. You're perfect. Now, as you continue to grow and learn, you become perfect for that moment. But in this moment, you're perfect. Now, in this moment, you're perfect and changed. It doesn't mean just because you're perfect in this moment doesn't mean you're not going to change. Of course you will. And the world is going to change too. A force of will would ruin it. A force of will would ruin it, would ruin the world. It would ruin you if someone like forced their will upon you to make you something else. If it had a guide, it would be misled. If you had a guide, if you had like even when it comes to like coaches and things like that, like it's so easy to be misled. There's so many, you know, coaches and speakers and I almost said imposters, but influencers and other things like that that don't guide you to you. They're seeing themselves and they see how like hurt and broken they are, and so they want to help everybody. That okay, I do, I and Allison, I think, do like some like personal work with people, but I would hope from the way she speaks and the way I speak that we guide people to find themselves, not guide them to be me or guide them to understand what I understand. And I make sure that I'm doing my work so that I'm not afraid when I'm working with people. So there are times for all things, even this, whatever it happens to be. So no matter what, there are times for all things, even this, whatever it happens to be. Meaning, even this, whatever you're going through, even this, like there are times to wake up in the morning, there's times to cry, there are times to laugh, there are times to do all those things, all those songs that talk about that. There are times for all things, even this, whatever it happens to be. Even reading the Tao, there's a time for that. The master allows all things to be as they are. She doesn't want to control them. One, that's a lot of responsibility. Like imagine if you could control the weather, but you had to do certain things, right? You had to get through all the weather that needs to happen. Imagine if you can control it. Like if you can control the weather, the minute the weather breaks someone's house, you're responsible. You don't want that. Allow things to be as they are. Don't try to control them. She simply lets them do what they do. She also does what she does, staying centered and down. And that's important. Like if I can allow something to be what it is, and I can do what I do, which means I can take myself out of situations, put myself into situations, protect myself, and do all of those things. I can do what I do while allowing others to do what they do. And that's all okay. Just staying connected to Tao is at the core of all of that. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me, Allison. I appreciate you coming up. If anybody else has a number between 1 and 81, Anthony Thomas is going to join me. We're going to pick a number. We're going to read a little bit of the Tao. Anthony, how are you?
Do I get to pick the number?
You do get to
I'm
pick a
good.
number.
How are you, Martin John?
What's that?
I was good to talk to you. Good to finally talk with you.
Yeah, it's nice. Is this the first time we've talked?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I don't always. I've been doing this for a little while, so sometimes I don't talk to people for a couple of a while, and I don't remember. And I wasn't sure. Your name looked familiar, but I didn't wasn't sure. So how's your week going? Here we are on a Monday.
Oh, Mondays. I'm like Garfield the cat with Mondays. I don't like Mondays.
Okay. Well, let's find a number that might help us accept Monday as it is.
Okay. How about 42?
42. Okay, this is one. This one is entitled "Holding Both Male and Female."
Oh wow.
Um, so Tao gives birth to the universe. No, Tao gives birth to universes. Universes give birth to planets. Planets give birth to beings, and beings give birth to everything else. Tao is the great mother. All else holds both male and female. By all things embracing both, harmony is achieved. To feel alone is avoided by men, yet that is where no identity resides. The master holds no identity. She embraces her aloneness, realizing when she is at one with herself, she is at one with all things. Thoughts?
On the on point, on point with where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Ba- Balancing duality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How are you
yin yang.
dealing with that these days?
How am I dealing with it? Well, I've returned to my martial training for
Hmm.
one, and I've been pulling a lot of wisdom from the East. Um,
Yeah.
I've been checking out your show.
Thank you.
Uh, yeah, I like it. I like your perspective. Um,
Thanks.
are you're pulling from the Tao? Is that a particular text?
Yeah, it's the Tao Te Ching.
Okay.
And there are 81 verses. So that's, I just asked people to pick a verse. Now there are many, many different translations. The one that I read, the one that I'm reading today is mine, which isn't published yet, but that I'm writing notes for each of the. I'm currently writing notes that'll get published with them, translation notes or rendition notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah. So as we go through this, when we talk about that whole like balancing things, we have to realize that we are part of a bigger system, right? Like, so Tao gives birth to universes, and when I went through this, the idea of like, there's more than one universe. Like
Mm,
we have to we have to recognize that, and then universes give birth to planets. So that's where, so within the universe, the planets reside, and within the planets give birth to beings, all sorts of beings. Like, we're part of that. We're us and goats and trees and plants and all of the things, right? Like, the planet gives birth to beings, and here on Earth we have all the beings that we know. Beings give birth to everything else, from ideas to products to things to identities. Like, that's what beings give birth to.
love it. And so we harness that creativity as beings, and hopefully through a balanced effort we can produce, I don't know, goodness in our small universe.
Yeah.
I believe that universes are being birthed constantly.
Yeah.
I believe that you and um, y'all were just talking about, what were y'all just talking about? Perspectives.
Yeah.
Uh, a perspective is a small universe,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, and this is relativity, you know. Um, and so every observable, or every observer, every every observable point in space and time is a universe unto itself. And according to quantum entanglement, we're all part of the same system, and we're all intertwined, and we all
Right.
affect each other to some degree.
And it's not even just human beings, right? It's the
Right.
Tao gives birth to the universe, and then universes and planets and then beings. And like, that's the thing. Like, we're all held together. We're all held together in this great entanglement.
Yeah, we're really just scratching the surface on this, but
Right.
you know, I'm just starting to notice this more and more in the
And
stars
then
and the planets. I've started looking into the astro charts, and just seeing how, not necessarily from a esoteric practice, but just really watching the order in the skies, and how
hmm
magnificent it is, and how perfect it is. You know, I think about the Mayans, and how they didn't have television distractions. They didn't have social media. They had stars to watch, and so
Right.
they paid close attention to them, and they mastered that system.
As a kid, even now as an adult, it's important for me to know where like the moon is in the
Hmm.
sky. Because you- imagine like we don't, because we're paying attention to our phones so often, we don't recognize that the moon is moving, right? Like the moon
Oh yeah.
moves, right? Like, and we don't necessarily recognize that as much as we recognize the sun is moving,
Hmm.
but it's such an important thing to be able to recognize, to be like, oh, one night it's here, and when it is in this position it is full, and
Hmm.
when the moon is full I know where it is in the sky. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't recognize those things, like, and but it's like that's the sky, dude. Like,
Yeah.
that's never off. And it's
No.
like, and you got your head in your phone or on the internet or doing the things like watching the shows and stuff, and it's like you know more about the Kardashians than you do about the sky. Are you kidding me? So like as this goes on, it says Tao is the great mother, all else holds both male and female, meaning the universe is female, meaning that everything, it will accept things, it will yield to things, right? When we talk about female, we talk about that idea of yin, that idea of receiving.
Yes.
And so the Tao is the great mother. All else holds both male and female. The planet, even though it's solid, so it seems male, it we can live on it. So that means that like there is space here. That means it will yield. The sky, we can throw anything into the sky and it will receive it. And that's how it holds both male and female. And we, as individuals, have the ability to be penetrating and be yielding at the
Yes.
same time.
Yes.
By all things embracing both, harmony is achieved. When you are only forceful, when you are only penetrating, when you are only one of the two, like that really gets in the way of you being able to harmonize with other things. Because you are not there's only one thing that holds and it's Tao. Tao is the only thing that it is the great mother and births all things. And if you touch that, you can birth as well.
Yes. Talk about manifesting from a
Hmm.
martial sense. So do you have some martial background?
No.
Boy, you sound like you do.
Oh, if it's truth, then I have some back.
Some of these concepts that you're just you're just hitting all the heights on. It took many hours of meditation and and um, and exercise and progression through the ranks to try and figure out a lot of these things. So it's really impressive.
Oh, well, thank you.
Mm.
And then we move on to this idea to feel alone is avoided by men, yet that is where no identity resides. And that's an interesting sort of concept because, like, a lot of people don't like being alone. But when you're alone, you don't have an identity. You
Mm.
don't have to hold on to anything. You don't have to hold on to any title. You don't have to hold on to your gender. You don't have to hold on to any of the things that the world impresses upon you. And yet, being alone is often avoided by so many people.
Yes.
That quiet, that meditation that you're talking about, prayer,
Hmm.
in there, you're not being judged. And yet we avoid those places because it's so nice when we're judged kindly and it
Yes.
feels good. So we kind of want to be judged as long as it's not negatively, right? Like,
Yeah.
so if we go out in the world and remember, like, holding both male and female, holding, like, being able to be strong but also be yielding, and being at one with all things, we have to be alone, and aloneness gives us our true self without all the judgment, without all of that stuff. And yet, that is where no identity exists. When we can get rid of our identity completely, our self, we can get rid of this idea of like, I am. I am a man who needs to be able to do this because our world decides that. Like when I can get rid of all that, that's when I'm alone. That's when I'm truly myself, actually.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. You can't. Those masks can't. They can't hold weight when you're
Right.
by yourself. I actually spend a lot of time in solitude these days, so I know where you're at. I know
Yeah.
exactly about.
You
Yeah.
know, and this finishes up with his last four lines. The master holds no identity. She embraces her aloneness. Realizing when she is at one with herself, she is at one with all things. You
Mm.
know, I always like to say there's a difference between aloneness and loneliness.
Yes.
You
Oh
know, like
yeah.
you said, you spending time in solitude is aloneness.
Lonely is despair.
Right. Lonely is needy. Lonely is needing from others and needing and feeling despair because you can't be alone.
Ah. Ah. Ooh.
But like that aloneness, like when you can embrace that aloneness, that's a completely different trip.
Hmm. Okay. That resonated.
Yeah. When she is at one with herself, she is at one with all things. And like, you know, if you meditate and do all of that work, like you can see there are moments, and this might not happen for every meditation, but there are times where like you're alone and you're quiet and your eyes are closed and all of a sudden everything falls away. And when everything falls away, it all almost becomes one thing. And it's all in touch. Like you can touch it all. You can just
Pure.
kind of go inside and find that you aren't within your body any longer.
Yes, that's an attainable state.
Yeah. And that's that receivership, right? You're not forcing yourself upon anything. That's you receiving. That's you being able to yield to this
Yield. I love
moment.
it.
You know, you
Yes.
can yield to that because you know it's like when you don't yield to it, you wanna push against it. You want there's resistance. Now, if
Yeah.
you can just go weak, go limp, and allow that to be there, oh, it feels so good.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm definitely drew something from this talk.
Good, I'm glad. Well, thank you for joining me today, Anthony. I appreciate it. I look forward to talking with you again.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm going to switch you out for Julie. Julie's going to come up and we're going to have a little talk on the Dow. And then I think I'm gonna call it a day. Julie, how are those windows?
Well, I was going to say to you, the sun is shining,
The
and
sun is
I've
shining.
yeah, and I've got smudges on my windows.
Already?
Yeah, smudgy as anything.
That happens. That happens. You put your face up against that. I know if my nose touches any surface, there is a little dot there. That's for sure.
This is like where I've been cleaning them, but the water is dried before I've managed to like get it off.
I
So I've
see.
got
Yeah.
smudges on every window, but they're still cleaner than they were.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like you see that and then you get to notice it. And you get to be like, okay, well, am I going to
Clean them again?
is it bothersome? Is it something
Absolutely.
that, like and I'm like, well, what am I being called to do? And now you can let it go, but are you letting it go out of frustration? Are you letting it because I know a friend of mine who's like, I just mopped, so don't, like treat
Don't
the
walk on my
floor
floor.
with, treat the floor with its respect because I just mopped. And it's like, wait, shouldn't we always do that? I don't know. Like,
That's it. That's exactly my thought. My thought is listen, I've got windows.
yeah,
What can I say? I've got windows.
that's
That's
right.
great. Let's just go with that.
That's right. You know, and I can be happy with these windows as they are right now.
Yep, they
Yeah.
are lucky porthole windows, and I'm happy. Well, I've got a number for you.
Shoot.
31.
31. This is entitled Of Weapons and Mourning.
Mm,
Mourning.
interesting.
um, Weapons are horrible tools. The master avoids weaponizing anything. Weapons promote fear and separation. Avoided by those who walk in blessings, embraced by those who walk in delusion. If compelled to use them, she uses restraint. There is no glory in victory if weapons are used. Her enemy is not evil, but human like herself. How can she glory in their slaughter? When the master is compelled to engage a weapon, she does so gravely and filled with compassion, knowing that this is the first state of her mourning.
That is an astounding piece of writing. It's absolutely wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm taking credit where it's due. Like, I mean,
Absolutely, that is
yeah,
beautifully written. Because weaponization, you can weaponize a thought.
that's right.
You can weaponize an intent to somebody
Hmm.
or something which they do not deserve because, like you said, they may be living in a delusion.
Right.
Who are you to judge that? Judgment itself is a weaponization.
That's right.
So let it go and
Yeah.
only use it with compassion. If you have to weaponize your words, your thoughts, your intent, do it with compassion, almost as if that is you. You are the receiver. That's the way to think about it. It's
You know,
beautifully written. That I love that absolute quality.
I was talking to, I was talking to someone who went to a wedding recently, and their brother who is on the spectrum, um, it was fine, and then started grumbling and making, weaponizing his presence.
Yeah,
He was grumbling and making, was like upset about all of this stuff because, and in the way it was expressed to me, it was because he wasn't getting attention. So
yeah,
he's weaponizing himself, and he's not aware of, all of this kind of stuff. So he's weaponizing himself, and like you were saying, it's like it's so, like, it's hurtful to other people. And if he's picking up that weapon, like, he has to recognize that this is going to be the first state of your mourning. This is like you're going to lose your relationships. Maybe not. Maybe people are going to be more
you're
more
going to lose.
adherent.
More
They're gonna,
so,
yeah,
you'll
they're
lose your own
because
value. You'll lose
right,
your own value. That's the absolute of it. As soon as you weaponize, you are then already telling yourself that you are not enough.
that's right,
And you are because you are everything and everything is you.
that's right. So and it's like, and you don't like, that's the first state of your mourning. Like, as soon as you have to pick up a weapon, as soon as you weaponize something, it starts here. Weapons are horrible tools. The master avoids weaponizing anything.
Yeah.
And that really, like, once again, patting myself on the back, like, that is what I needed to get across here, is that, like, it's not about the tool of the weapon, but it's about the
The
act of
wielding.
weaponizing.
Yeah. Yeah. The wielding,
Yeah.
the action. Yeah, I agree. And that whole
Weapons,
process, when you look at it, the fact that you've picked it up, you started the wielding, that's the point you really need to look at.
yeah.
Why?
Weapons promote fear and separation. Like,
Yeah.
imagine if, like, if and like, we've all had this experience. We might be here on wisdom, and like, as soon as we start to feel like attacked, and we start weaponizing our words, and we start to talk down to people or start doing things to make them uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, like that, what is that doing other than promoting separation?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And the way it is if you turn it around, how are you feeling about this? What is the necessity for you?
Right.
Now have a look at it before you start wielding it. Have a look at why it's in your hand. Why is it at hand? What is the requirement from you for this? What is it gonna do?
Right.
Ask that first. Then you can put it
Avoided
down. Yeah.
avoided by those who walk in blessing, embraced by those who walk in delusion. Now, any one of us can get delusional at any moment,
Yep.
and we can embrace and pick up a weapon. But those who walk in delusion regularly are promoting the use of weapons
Yeah.
because they believe that weapons are somehow, like
Power.
useful. Yeah, power. And they do it through words, and they want you to weaponize words, and they want you to weaponize everything. And it happens on all sides. This isn't like me kind of picking on, the right or the left or
Oh
anybody,
yeah.
anything like
I'm
that. This is
sure I'm
this is
sure I've been there and done that without even realizing I'm doing it. I'm
right.
sure I have. Yeah.
And it's because we're delusional and don't feel connected, and we don't feel safe. We feel separate. And as it said earlier, weapons promote fear and separation. And if I'm feeling separate, I want to be safe in that separation. If I feel fear, I want to feel safe. And so I pick up a weapon,
Mm.
whether it's a word, whether it's a tool, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
that's delusional. And the more weapons you pick up, the more delusional you become, because the more you identify with delusion. If compelled to use them, she uses restraint. There is no glory in victory if weapons are used.
Hmm.
Her enemy is not evil, but human like herself. How can she see glory in their slaughter? Even if it's words. Because we know we've had this bullying and all this going on the internet and stuff. We know that we can put someone down and they could take their own life.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
How can we glory in that? How can we glory in winning? What good is winning?
Nicely said. I totally get that. There is no
Oop, you're muted.
there's no
Probably got a caller
yeah, I
coming.
just switched it off because that's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm
There
here
is no,
now.
yeah, there is no,
Yeah. Yeah, that is a morning that starts, isn't it? When you realize that empty, less than feeling that you're bestowing on your fellow human being.
yeah.
There's no glory in that.
When the master is compelled to engage a weapon, she does so gravely and filled with compassion,
Yeah.
knowing that this is the first state of her mourning. I mean, imagine that. Like if you are pushed and pushed and pushed, and then you said, okay,
I have to tell you,
I
weapon,
have
the
to do this.
truth. I have
Yeah,
to tell you the truth, say.
yeah.
Then you
Like,
do so with compassion
hmm
and kindness. But already you're starting to feel it. You're starting to feel that
yeah,
wielding of that weapon. Yeah.
yeah.
And
It's
you
like
do.
I want to, like this is what we were talking about with Anthony a minute ago. I want to yield. I want to yield. I want to yield until I can no longer yield.
Mm,
Then, with compassion, I can make a weapon.
yeah.
And but as it states, weapons are horrible tools and we avoid weaponizing anything. That doesn't mean we don't do it, it won't happen, but we will avoid it at all costs.
Yeah. Observe, I say. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
Is
that's
just observe. Before you invest, observe. And, that's been the best tool that I've been shown ever is that one.
right. It's a
I know
good one.
you're giggling because
It's a good one.
you know where it
I
comes
know.
from.
This has been Earlier, Allison came on, and she was talking about the same sort of stuff, and we were kind of breaking down like the work that we did in the Recover Yourself workshop and stuff, and this idea of like getting triggered and then finding your theme, finding that theme that keeps popping up, and so today has been littered with wonderful references to my work. So.
How lovely.
So I'm super happy to be able to tell people
Well,
that the work
it's
I do is pretty fucking awesome.
it is, and I can tell you, it's not just awesome for you, Martin John.
Yes, yeah,
That's what's so lovely about it.
yeah,
It's, when you hear about or see or notice the ripples from that work, it's a joy for every ripple as well because it goes on. It goes on and on and on.
yeah.
So, you know, when you're joyful about it, it just fills me up with massive joy as well.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
grateful.
what a gift to
Yeah,
share, hey? That's quality.
yes, it is.
So
All right. Well,
thank you so much. And
absolutely.
our number today was really good for me because
What's that?
I can see weaponization a lot over the last couple of
Yeah,
months. I've noticed it and just done exactly that. Just noticed it.
yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. I don't need to pick up my own weapon. I don't need to do that. I can just observe and see and try and understand beyond that use of a weapon because it's being used for a reason. It's being used because people are feeling maybe that they have to do it. They have to compete or race or be powerful. And there's
Hmm.
no need because it all comes anyway. It's
When
there
you when you
anyway.
when you tell people that it's going to be okay, the first thing they run to is fear of, but maybe it won't.
Yes.
And so they find that it feels safe to weaponize. It feels safe
Mm,
to weaponize when they feel separate, when they feel unsafe, when they feel fear, because
mm.
they're like, well, what if it doesn't work out? And that's always the thing. If we say, okay, well, it's gonna work out, and you say, well, what if it doesn't? Well, you're just living in a fantasy world and all of that kind of stuff. I'm
Yeah,
just like,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
well,
yeah, I know that.
literally, your world is fantasy. So, like, that's why you're walking in delusion. You know,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
that's okay. We can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But
absolutely no judgment. But yeah,
no,
it's lovely to just be able to see it so
yeah,
clearly and so just because it is, and that's it. It's just nice to see it because it is, and not be under the influence of it,
that's
Martin.
right. That's right. Thank you so much, Julie. I
No,
love you.
take care. Love you loads. Bye bye.
Okay, we're going to call it a day from there. Thank you all for joining me for Tao of the Day. We covered 18, 29, 31, and 42 today. And I'm really excited for all that I get to share here on Tao of the Day. And I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. But until next time, keep recovering yourself.